3, 2, 1. Hi there, I'm Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and good morning on this Saturday. She's back. It is none other than Lou Lebentz. Good morning, Lou Lebentz in England. How are you, my darling friend?
I'm very well this later on in the afternoon on a Saturday, Dani. Thank you. How are you?
I am so delighted to be looking at your beautiful face, darling. Seriously.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me back.
Of course, you were a massive delight to everybody last time. So everybody, Lou Lebentz is one of the most prolific trauma therapists and psychotherapists that I've ever met in my entire life. Now, I know she's my mate, but honestly, she's worked for the top rehab centers. She is a font of information. She has just devoted her life for over 25 years at this stage, isn't it, Lou?
It is about that long. Yeah, Dani.
And we are going to give you some of the really heavy caseload patients that she has had to work with successfully over a long lifespan. But before we get into that, and there's going to be some nice light bits to this too, but it's good to know that people like Lou Lebentz are out there really, working for those who really do have traumatic experiences that a lot of us, even though all of us have trauma on some level, we couldn't possibly imagine what some of these people go through. And it might be a little shocking to hear, but it's all right. It's all right. We all just come together in love and compassion. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lou and her background, and she's going to also, because it's her story. This woman here, several years ago, got herself into a little bit of a fix, unbeknown to her own beautiful self, and actually suffered a chronic psychotic episode in the middle of London. And she's wandering around in a very serious state of mind, saying to everyone that she was the one who was going to put the buzz back into Britain. Now, we might be able to kind of titter a little bit at that all these years later. And honestly, Lou, when you hear something like that, it is so funny. Like, you're going to put the buzz back into Britain. Did Britain lose its buzz? But let's get in a little bit to that story. Can we? Would you please share a synopsis of what actually happened to you?
Crikey. Well, I am going back some 3 decades, I think. So I was pretty young when it happened, and I was working for a company called Joe Bloggs Jeans. Now, for people that aren't British, they probably won't know what Joe Bloggs means, but Joe Bloggs is a kind of saying, I think, that we used to say for anybody. And there was a big jeans company at the time, and I was working at a clothes show exhibition, and we had rappers and dancers and models, and it was a big clothes event. And on the way back to London that night, I remember I was kind of a bit hyper, a bit manic, and I couldn't stop talking. And we got home to London from Birmingham, and it was pancake day. I'll never forget, it was pancake day. So I ate my pancakes and I washed it down with 3 or 4 glasses of Pinot Grigio. I was a pretty big drinker in those days. And the next thing I knew, I'd been up all night writing and not going to bed. And I woke up I in the morning. I thought I'd better get to work, and I ran down to the tube station to get on the tube to work. But I looked a bit odd. I picked out these these big flared trousers that I'd never worn, and this leopard print kind of waistcoat, and these platform boots. And I kind of tottered off to the tube station with this big smile, smiling at everybody. And I kind of thought that everything was great, wonderful. Anyway, fast from Richmond upon Thames, I've been driven home from work by a boss to my sisters, basically because they thought I was unwell. Well, I thought I'd seen the light, and she tried to put me to bed with a brandy and a pizza margarita, and I was having none of it. A couple of hours later, I was up going off into the streets of London, thinking that I was being followed by TV camera crews, and phoning radio stations in London, thinking that there was some massive event and happening, and that I was the creator of it all, and that I literally was putting the buzz back into Britain. And I kind of thought I'd made it. And through that night of me wandering around the streets of London, I clearly remember at one point, obviously being a bit knackered, that I lay down on some grass, heathland somewhere with the damp, dewy grass behind my back, and managed to see up in the sky and the stars above a very bizarre picture of me standing on a stage with two of my favourite heroes at the time, who were Oprah Winfrey and the Dalai Lama. And there was little old me standing in the middle. And this vision was like the most profound moment of my life, because I trotted off back to my home, drinking and grabbing a pint of milk at 7 a.m. that next morning, realizing I hadn't eaten or drunk all night. I'd just been wandering the streets. And then pretty soon after, the ambulance arrived. And I'm like, what are you getting an ambulance for? I've never felt better in my life. And when we finally got to the sign that said psychiatric hospital, I thought everybody was having a laugh. I'd never felt better. So that was my 24 age, 30 years ago, psychotic break. I mean, Dani, if I'm honest, I think looking back now, it probably felt more like a spiritual awakening to me than actually a psychosis. And, you know, if I'd known what I know now, I'd rather have gone into a spiritual community or somewhere that worked with transliminal states and that understood consciousness and you know, the difference between medicalizing something and actually holding somebody through something. But unfortunately, I ended up in a hospital with haloperidol and lithium and a lot of other very heavy duty drugs. And I was pretty unwell for about 6 months. I lost the ability to talk, to walk. I was shuffling. So I was I wasn't in a good place. But it became the changing moment of my life. And it became a, you know, when I chose to look back at it later in my 30s and actually look at what was really happening for me, it was the turning point. And that vision of me with Oprah Winfrey and the Dalai Lama, that's been my North Star. You know,
it's incredible. And darling, you've left out one of the most important aspects of why you actually had a full-blown psychosis. What happened?
Well, I had a full-blown psychosis because that was the second time, unfortunately, I'd been spiked in my life. So I'd been spiked previously at 19, and then this was at 24 with LSD. And, you know, I didn't find out until about a year or two later, when I met one of the models that was on the stage at that clothes exhibition that day. But Dani, you know, I think whether I'd been spiked or not, I was a pretty unwell 24-year-old with a terrible drinking habit and a shed load of trauma from my childhood and teenage years that was untreated. So, you know, I think the lid was waiting to blow off at some point, and the LSD, you know, it just shot the lid off all in one go.
I understand that, Lou. I really do understand that. And I think that it's so important for people to understand, you know, when we're young and we think, oh, let's spike someone's drink, let's drop something in somebody's drink, that you have no idea how you can destroy a person's life. And if it's happened to you, I'm so sorry. Lebentz, now a trauma therapist herself, psychotherapist herself, many years of study. It really did unravel you. And at some point, goodness knows how, you were able to really kind of reconcile all the different broken pieces together in order to be this just phenomenally successful, loving, funny, beautiful, person that you are today. I just admire you so much. I just have the utmost respect for you.
Likewise.
Seriously, well, thank you.
Likewise,
but seriously,
yeah.
I mean, I know over the years we've kind of like, gently, lovingly, without naming names, like discuss different kind of clients or patients that we've had between us. But I am definitely, if I'm at a 1, 2, 3, maybe a 4, girl, you're working at 9s, 10s and above in terms of people's actual trauma. So to the audiences that will see this, we would love to share with you just a couple of the heavier load, beautiful, unwell patients that Lou has come across over her long term as a psychotherapist.
Well, without naming anything about those individuals, I'm just going to kind of generalize and say that, trauma is such a big word for people. And I think people think of the trauma word as being, 9/11 or the tsunami or the Manchester bombings in the UK or something massive, or maybe war or genocide. But actually trauma that's not what it really means. Trauma means any dysregulation within our own nervous system. And actually, we've got 4 different levels really of trauma. We've got a level 1 trauma, which is your one-off events and your big events, rape or sexual abuse or physical abuse or neglect, or all of those childhood, what we call developmental traumas, or your one-off massive, tsunami. That's a level 1. And then we've got a level 2, 3, and 4. And I'll do 3 and 4 first because they're more widely understood than a level 2. So a level 3 is our parents' trauma and their introjects and what they haven't dealt with that kind of gets transferred to us. And then a level 4 is the intergenerational trauma or the environmental trauma, kind of the societal, cultural, intergenerational grandparents. If we grew up in certain places in the world, we are going to be more traumatized than if we grew up in other places. If we grew up in poverty, if we grew up in a war zone, if we grew up as a Black African, in countries where or we grew up in a society that was homophobic, that's a level 4 trauma. But a level 2 trauma is what's not understood as trauma, and where a lot of people that I know don't really correlate the two. And a level 2 trauma is when we've had a parent who unfortunately isn't emotionally available to us. And they're not emotionally available because maybe they've got their own depression or anxiety, or maybe they've got their own issues, or maybe they're taking drugs or alcohol too much, or they're overworking. And so it's that lack of emotional regulation in our early years that is so crucial to our later well-being. Because if we haven't been soothed and our nervous system hasn't been soothed early on, we don't learn how to regulate our own emotions and our body. And that sets up all sorts of dynamics later on in life.
Mm-hmm. It really does.
Yeah.
I know it's not a quick answer, but if somebody is listening to you and they're starting to think about their childhood where they weren't given love or nurture by a mom or a dad or a guardian, grandparent, and again, there's two sides. There's your natural nature that you come in with, and there's the nurture that you receive or you don't receive. How would you suggest to somebody a really easy, beautiful technique for them to self-regulate when they start going into remembering that they may not have felt love from, a significant adult?
Well, what we've always got to remember, I think, with whatever trauma is that there are parts of us. You know, there's our adult, present moment, functional self. You know, the person that we are in the here and now, in this moment. And then usually what I call them, we have what I call a wounded self often, and an adapted self. So a wounded self is our very young child, probably up to the age of 6 or 8, that has been wounded quite early on. And then our adapted is kind of like the way that we deal with covering those wounds, the maybe the stroppy teenager, more part of us, the part of us that pushes away. So we've got a child that wants to love, for example, or wants to attach and connect. And then we've got a stroppy teenager that goes, oh, no, thanks very much, you know, push away. And then we've got our adult. So the first thing I always say to people is your trauma, unless it's very current, isn't in your adult self. Your dysregulation is in different parts of you. So what we have to learn to do is we have to strengthen your adult before we do anything else. We have to get your adult to feel resilient and resourceful. And so let's look at all the qualities and the aspects of your adult that you've got that you like, even if your critical parent can't stand your wounded child self.
Yeah, massive. One of the ways that I help people with that is, again, depending on their level of trauma, depending where they are psychologically and emotionally in that moment, because obviously we're always making judgment calls to do the best we can for the person that sits in front of us, is I'll often have that person imagine sitting their 7-year-old on their lap, and I'll do it with them, and I'll close my eyes with people so they feel comfortable, because we're on a Zoom, you know, and I'll just go so they don't have to worry if I'm looking at them or not. And then I'll talk them through, you know, a guided visualization where they're wrapping their arms around that little girl inside of them or that little boy. Yeah. And often I'll find myself just sitting and rocking, you know, self-soothing, which is a really beautiful way to self-regulate, actually, self-soothing. And then a lot of people, you know, fully blown, big, huge grown men have been tough all their lives, and they often break the hardest. God love them, because they've had to be so strong, and that mentality. And I think having lived in several different countries in my life already, I can say to myself that in Britain, God, we ain't half tough. Yeah. Like, we ain't half frigging tough. Yeah. The Brits are really tough on themselves and really verbally abusive. And in America too, I've lived in both, and Canada, but I do say to myself, what I've observed in being in the worlds I've been in therapeutic environments, that the Brits are definitely some of the verbally cruelest that I've come across.
Well, I think, you know, we have to look at cultural issues and stuff as part of that, don't we? I mean, the Brits have a very stiff upper lip, you know, it's very, look at bless them, our royal family, you know, it always amazes me how they manage to go to all sorts of events and funerals and terribly sad things without shedding a tear. I mean, I cry at the drop of a hat. So, but, you know, the Brit is taught, and we're taught really that the best thing to do is to disconnect. The best thing to do is not be emotional. The best thing to do is to have a poker face and not be too open. And that's kind of culturally how Brits are viewed. And if you think about disconnecting, and you think about disconnecting from your emotions, you're actually disconnecting from all your parts. And you're really disconnecting from your own authentic self, because if you're not in touch with your emotions and your wounded parts or your adapted parts, you're kind of like a bobbing head, just bobbing around, completely disconnected from everything. You know, and you were saying about the 7-year-old sitting on your, you know, people's laps and doing the inner child visualizations. And I will say, well, yeah, that's great that you can do that work, because my clients are nowhere near that. my clients, most of them have got a level 2 trauma, i.e. they've got all the early wounding with a parent that was never available to them, or was abusive, or was alcoholic, or was schizophrenic. Then normally added to the childhood trauma, the developmental trauma, they've then got all the other traumas on top. So I mainly work with something called complex PTSD, which is not single incident trauma. It's not PTSD, which is a one-off usual event. It's where you have lots of events that accumulate so that actually you can't really self-regulate your emotions. You're not really in touch. You're a lot of the time you're very dissociated, and often my clients use drugs or alcohol or self-harm or other coping strategies to try and self-soothe. And if I got them to ever imagine their wounded child self, they would absolutely want to rip them apart. They wouldn't go anywhere near yet ever putting their arms around them, because the amount, sadly, of self-loathing and self-disgust is so huge. It takes me a while to even get through that defended, adapted part that just won't go near there.
Can you tell us a bit on this level, and then we will switch vibration, because obviously this is a heavier, but it's good for people to kind of try and understand.
It's the truth.
So, well, exactly.
It's happening out there with lots of people. So,
well,
you know, we can't sugar it up for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's absolutely. I think it's important because, again, when people really start to hear different, not everyone's trauma is important. Everybody's pain is important. Everybody on the planet is going through a level of upset, stress, trauma, anxiety. No one is unaffected in the last 2 years.
And comparisons, Dani, don't work. So anybody listening that go, oh, I'm not there, or oh, that, you cannot compare yourself to anybody else. Please don't.
Absolutely, absolutely. So give us a little bit of an understanding as to some of the ways that some of the patients that come to you react and respond to you, and some of the things they do to themselves.
Well, they all react and respond in different ways according to, I guess, their wounding and their adaptation. I mean, some clients binge and struggle with bulimia several times a day. Some clients don't eat at all and will get down to 10 calories a day. Some clients will self-harm frequently throughout the day, and some clients will self-harm, drink, not eat, and do all of it just to try, because all of those are coping strategies, and we all as human beings, we use and develop coping strategies to manage our emotions and our feelings. You know, whether we're binging out on Netflix or we're binging out on donuts, you know, they're all to distract or dissociate or disconnect from ourselves. And whatever journey, whatever path we're on, the healing journey is always to come back into the body and rise up through the body, you know, and to be able to sit with ourselves and not run away from what we're feeling, to be able to tolerate it and to turn inwards and reparent those parts of us and learn to like or accept, because you can never learn to love, first off, those disowned parts of ourselves that we feel so awful about. And can we do that journey? And have I seen that journey happen? Absolutely, categorically.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. We can all do the work.
Yeah, no, I know. It's beautiful. And again, I've known and seen you over the years, and you've just achieved so much and helped so many thousands and thousands of people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your Facebook group, because it's such an important resource, and right now for free. On Facebook, Lebentz created 2.5 years ago after a very mad few days that she and I spent in San Diego. We had so much fun.
Oh, we
went to this conference. There was 2,000 people, and I love it when they play like mad music and everyone gets up and dances, and we were banging, head banging, and just
it was brilliant. I've never laughed so much in my life.
Oh God, we were a couple of right mongheads, weren't we? A couple of wallies, doing our doing our thing. And actually, oh no, you froze again. This happened last. What a brilliant place to freeze. Oh, that's so great. Oh, I do hope she comes back. I do. I love that. Honestly, this lady, you have no idea. She has people sitting in a chair opposite her that are so traumatized. If she moves,
you're on mute.
Okay, that was hilarious. Okay, it's recording again, so we're going to keep going. All right, you froze. You froze. You froze. Oh, your head off. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I was sitting and peeing my pants. But let's continue. Hello, everybody. This is part 2. It is Saturday, the 19th of February, 2022, and this is Lebentz, significantly, unbelievably talented psychotherapist. And I'm going to put this as part 2 with Lou 2022.
Okay, cool.
Discussing some of the patients that Lou gets, some of the levels of different traumas. And then we were moving gently to an event that you and I went to in San Diego 2.5 years ago, and how much fun we had there, and how we loved that. I mean, it was very much a conference that people are coming on stage, and there was one really beautiful girl, and she wasn't, a skinny little, size of a straw. She was a full-bodied, gorgeous woman telling us how she created her own makeup company.
Yeah.
And there were other people like that all the way through. I forget the other guy's name. Was a beautiful African guy with dreadlocks. He's so good looking and so loving, and I can't remember his name. Oh, I really like him as well.
No, I can't remember. Was it Jamie for the girl?
Yeah, I think it was. And it's the guy's name is something like a T, like not Tyrrell. Oh, I really like him, and he was really up and coming and just really.
Yeah, we'll have to put their names underneath in case anybody, because I loved her. I thought she was amazing. Yeah. She's come out with a book and stuff now.
Nice. So. Well, there were a lot of kind of they called themselves influencers. That was it. That's and they were, yeah. And so in between they would play rock and roll or disco music. And then me and Lou were just at the back, just twirling and leaping and jumping. And I love all that. I love all that because it raises the vibe and it gets you, the cardiovascular going. And it was a really, really good time.
Yeah, well,
and during that time, we made what I think is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, because Lou Lebentz is in it. And I'm going to put this little video, I think it's 1 minute long, and it's called Two Therapists Discuss. I think it was single and dating. Yes. And anyway, it'll give you a giggle. So you could actually pause this now, go and have a look at that, because it's going to be under this broadcast, and then come back to us if you want. But I watched that because of the way that this woman laughs her head off and throws her head back, and it just makes me giggle. We've all got our little go-to funny things that we look at. Well, it can't just be me. Another one I look at that I think is hilarious. You put in on YouTube, you put women falling over. That's it. Women falling over. Oh my God.
Oh, you are funny,
I want to lift. I will just watch that. I have watched it literally hundreds of times. It never gets old. It is just funny. And it's this whole kind of melee, this smorgasbord of women who should know better. One's on a trampoline and she backs up and she falls off, but it's her friend filming her who is screaming, dying, laughing.
I always hate things like that because I feel so sorry for them.
Well, I do, then I get over it because I can see how funny it is. But I get stressed if I'm watching one of those shows where people are walking on stilts or they're on a unicycle and they're juggling fire. I can't handle it. It's too much for me. I get so triggered by that I have to turn it off, self-soothe, self-soothe, to kind of get past this. It's funny what kind of triggers us.
I know. Yeah.
In our first segment here that the internet dropped with you pulling that hilarious face, obviously moving into part 2 now. Who knew on a Saturday morning on February 19th, 2022 that we would be going here? But it's nice because the first part was a little bit kind of lower emotion, not very happy and cheery. So we can take, the audience through different kind of stages of madness and sadness and all the in-betweens. We were talking about your Facebook group called Trauma Thrivers that was born out of that weekend that we were in San Diego.
It was.
Can you tell us why you created the group Trauma Thrivers? And everyone out there, please join it. Oh my God, you cannot believe the content, the therapeutic methods that Lou and colleagues, and they do one-to-ones. Oh, it's just amazing. Please share Trauma Thrivers.
I created it really because there isn't somewhere to go that talks about trauma and thriving. So thriving is such an important aspect. And I think that's why, we can talk about the heaviness and we can talk about, how difficult it is to overcome trauma, but there are some lighter moments of it too. And we're not surviving trauma just to survive. We're getting through it and doing the work because we want to thrive again. It's important for us to thrive. So I wanted a space really that talked about thriving, that talked about how to trauma thrive, how to do more than just survive your trauma. And that's, and there's about nearly 5,000, I think, of us now. And it's a real mixture, which actually works because it's half clinicians and trauma therapists and coaches and people that work in the profession in there. And then I would say it's half survivor thrivers, people that are more lay people that are going in there to get support or help or guidance. It's not really a self-help group. It's more of a place to network and share ideas. And we do lots of live interviews in there, with other clinicians and people that know a lot about trauma. And I've had some really, really brilliant trauma people in there, from narcissistic abuse experts to experts on sex and love addiction, to people like Professor Stephen Porges, who is the founder of something called the Polyvagal theory, which is massive in mental health at the moment. So yeah, it's a good group.
Is amazing. And I'm going to come back to more of the group in a moment. Can you please share with us the polyvagal current topic, because it is massively growing and a lot of people still haven't heard about it.
I mean, some people are debunking it, but I think they're probably people debunking it because anybody that comes out with something that kind of revolutionizes, the healthcare or mental health is going to get some stick. So I love Dr. Stephen Porges because, he's one of the people that I've interviewed that feels like something that I call a super regulator. In fact, it might be his term, but one of those people that you sit with or that you're around that you just feel really comfortable with. Non-judged, really safe. You can almost feel like his nervous system is just so balanced that he's just really easy to be around. So he made the link, if you like, between the neuro mind stuff and the biological or physiological processes in the body. So he managed, I think, very eloquently to link the mind and body together in this 3-stage model that basically says we have 3 different systems on a ladder that our nervous system goes into. And at the top, in the green section, think of green traffic light, it's called ventral vagal. And in our ventral vagal place, if you'd watched part 1, you'd understand this bit, we're in our adult. So we are in our functional adult in ventral vagal. Everything around us is safe. We're not triggered. we're okay, we're in our bodies and we're calm, we're connected. We've got something called our social engagement system turned on, which basically means I can see you, I can hear you, I'm curious, I'm compassionate, I'm all those lovely things that I am in adult. Unfortunately, we're not always in our ventral vagal, us adults, us human beings.
Yeah.
So as soon as I recognize, Dani, that you're pulling a funny face at me, yeah, I start to go, I'm not sure whether I'm okay here, actually. I'm feeling a bit unsafe because she's made a funny face at me, or I've seen something that could be dangerous or unsafe, or a memory's come up, or I felt something within me that's gone. I start to come out of ventral vagal and I go into what's called the sympathetic nervous system, and I'm activated. I'm in fight or flight. I'm in adapted critical parent. Oh, danger, danger. I'm going into amber. If amber doesn't work, I come out of sympathetic and I go into the bottom of the ladder, which is dorsal vagal shutdown. And basically in shutdown, I am in freeze or flop. And I'm almost like I'm in child. I'm starting to go into dissociation, but at this level, I can't communicate. I've gone, you've lost me. And that's what we do all the time in different scenarios, because that's how our nervous system responds to everything. And what good therapy does really is it tries to teach us to move more quickly out of those sympathetic and dorsal vagal states and back into ventral vagal, or what we would call the window of tolerance. Because sometimes we're not very often in the window of tolerance where we're feeling everything in our body. We're either in sympathetic, race, 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 run, 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 fight, flight, 100 miles an hour, or which is kind of your anxiety presentations, or we're in dorsal vagal shutdown, collapse, I can't move, depressed states.
Yeah.
And so we've got to swing back into ventral vagal.
It's so interesting, that phrase, freeze or flop, like the emotional paralysis that a lot of us, have experienced, myself included, at different levels, different stages, depending on what we're experiencing. And that complete shutdown, that not needing to do one thing because you can't, you're just frozen, emotionally paralyzed, or it's such an interesting place to be. But there is so many different ways to heal, nurture, come out of that, again, depending on where you are. And, there is always something that can be done to someone in order to support, assist, create a safe space.
What I would say with that is, ordinarily what we want to try and do is get somebody back into their body and complete what wasn't completed historically in their freeze, flop, or shutdown. Because when we have events that happen to us that are traumatic, they get stored in the body. So trauma is in the body, which is why some talk therapies and some counseling don't work so well, because actually we have to activate, we have to work with the nervous system. So very often in EMDR, to do with those stuck states is move the body so that we can complete the process or shake it off or get rid of that cortisol or adrenaline. So quite often, if I'm taking somebody back into the memory, one foot in their adult, one foot in the memory, their body will shake or their legs will run, just so that they can process the somatic charge to go from passive to active and release it from the body, because that's what the body wants to do, you see.
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect and brilliant in explaining and taking somebody through a journey of understanding the different layers and levels. And bringing the heart and the mind together, surely 101, as they say in America, that's 101, is the most basic of all basics. Of course, and all these years of, last time, a few months ago, when you and I did our last broadcast, I was right on the subject of when I was studying to be a therapist, the different things I was looking at. We were studying Jung and Freud, and I remember I didn't agree. It didn't compute in my brain. I'm like, I don't get it. These blokes we're all following over 100 years ago or so. But don't question it, and I'm like, well, I did. Because I'm like, you know what? I really want to be brilliant at this. I really want to serve. I really want to get it. I want to understand. And, I'm asking questions and, which we should all do, no matter what level of training that we're in when it comes to supporting our brothers and our sisters on this planet,
I so agree with you. I so hear you. And, 20 years ago, whenever it was I started training, I couldn't understand it either. And it's only really been since the Polyvagal and various other people, there's a great guy called Peter Levine who has developed a model called Somatic experiencing, which is just body work. Or there's another woman called Pat Ogden that's done a process called sensory motor psychotherapy, which is moving the body to free up. And there's loads of others. And there's loads of others that confused me so much a few years ago. I put them together in a book. So if anybody's interested, you can buy the hard copy on Amazon, but it is 20 quid because there's a hell of a lot of print. Or you can go to the Trauma Thrivers website and put in /ebook and get it for free. But in the book, there are 56 different solutions to healing trauma. And I've laid out all of the 56 and what they are and why they work and how they work. And psychodynamic isn't in there, and other things that are more Freudian or Jungian that aren't body-based aren't in the book. Because for trauma, they don't work. And I don't know, I mean, shoot me if I'm wrong, but I see a revolution happening in mental health. And, I hate the word mental. I hate the word mental health because point to mental. What is mental? Where is mind? Does anybody know where mind is? Hello. What does it even mean? Whereas if we can start to see mental health, addiction or anxiety or depression or panic disorder or whatever other label you want to give it as a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system, that's much more apt. That's much more apt.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's, mind or not, it's all emotional.
Yeah, well, it's all in the body.
Yeah, exactly.
And the body is where all the emotions are carried. So, if we can discharge the body and let the body, but most of us don't, because we don't want to go there. We don't want to feel it to heal it. We just want to repress it, drink it down, smoke it down. I was going to say shag it down. I don't know what your audience is like, but
Oh, they're fab. They're so fab. They're so fab.
Do they know what shag means, though?
Most of them will. Shagging is, doing it with someone, birds and the bees.
I like the way you put on a West Country accent when you do birds.
That. Sometimes it does do that. Oh my God. Do you know what?
Just do it down in the West Country.
I can't help it. Do you know, though, I have to say something about that too. I tell you, at least every friggin' broadcast I do, no matter what the subject is, whether it's a mermaid or a fairy or an extraterrestrial or an amazing, psychotherapist, all about bringing love to people, information to people during this time that we're in. That's what my beautiful channel is all about. There's always going to be one bugger that's going to say something. And today, today, somebody will say, Lebentz said Black African. Please, can you?
Oh yeah, I did.
And please do not dare respond to that, okay? Because around the world, everyone's called different things. But what's happened is the idiots that force themselves into running my planet, your planet, our planet, they drop that in everywhere in order to trigger us to a response. And that programmed, triggered response is to respond to, you're a racist. Now, people don't know about my background. They don't know that I grew up in a blended family, that I have Africans and Ghanaians adopted in and out of my family. I don't bother telling people unless it just comes up naturally, because I don't think to, because I don't need to prove anything. But it's just such a silly thing.
Well, it is silly after 18 clients in the last 3 days and being a bit gaga, you know, so they can take it like that, or they can take it from how it was meant, in that societal trauma, one of the most difficult to deal with is racism. And that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to acknowledge how hard it is for people. You know, whether I get the terminology right or wrong, I'm sorry, you know, it's 54-year-old menopausal woman, you know, do what you do with that. You know, the heart is there, that I want to mention it and single it out because it's one of the hardest things ever. And I know that. Yeah.
But again, you know, please, you don't need to make excuses. Bloody fly, go away, keeps landing on me. No, because this is what we do, Lou. This is what we do. This is the white girl thing, okay?
Yeah.
So, oh my God, I can't say anything about. So the other day I did a broadcast with this absolutely fantastic lady. Her name is Fleur Brun, and she's a gorgeous mixture of everything. And so I introduced her as the indigenous Andromedan queen. She has an Andromedan connection. And, you know, somebody commented, like, because I said something about colored, because Fleur Brun likes to use the word melanated for beautiful different colored skins, darker, lighter, different shades. But then we all get this like, oh, fuck, don't say anything. People are going to get like, we've got to get past that shit. We've got to recognize that it's not us. We're not racist. People watching this are not racist, but the idiots at the top are trying always divide, and put this emotional trauma, because you're like, oh shit, you know, it makes you nervous. And at times I get a little nervous and anxious, like, oh shit, what did I say? We shouldn't have to even you do that. But it's a programmed response in us to try and defend.
Yeah.
So, you know, screw the 54-year-old menopausal woman. Oh, you're... Oh, no, Lou, you froze, my love.
You want to fuck up.
Right, didn't get a word of that, darling. Didn't get a word of that. Internet's unstable. But what did you just say?
I just said the chances are that when you don't want to make a mistake, and it's really important not to make a mistake, you make a mistake.
Yeah, or what somebody perceives as a mistake, because you know, it's a nonsense. It is just, it's so sad. And for me as a white person, I mean, I don't know anyone more colored than me. If I bruise myself, have you seen how many rainbow colors on my skin? I mean, that is colored, right? You know what I mean? It's like, we are, so come on, we got to, we're all beautiful melting pot of assorted colors and looks, and, you know, Samoans. I do find Samoans handsome, I have to say. Those big giant boys. Hello.
Oh God, here we go. Let's not maybe get off this track quick, or is that enough, do you think?
Definitely, I think that's enough. I think we should go back to Trauma Thrivers. Trauma Thrivers on Facebook, everybody. It is absolutely incredible. The resources there, the interviews that Lou and her colleagues have done to support all of us. So you get to watch these qualified, long-term experienced psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, all these really educated, experienced, you know, boots on the ground, people just dropping bomb after bomb after bomb, and this technique and this book and this discussion. So we, the lay people, can really kind of understand and really try and sort out within ourselves too, where we might be able to support ourselves more. I mean, it's just incredible. Like you said, now there's over 5,000 members. It's a combination of people will list their whole trauma. And I have read so many, and I just think, oh, love you, bless you for being so brave, because you've created a safe space. And people come in, they drop in and they type up their story and their pain. And then all these other people come in with love and support and resources. And it is a phenomenal group and a support network, Lou, that honestly, I think should be global. I really, really think it should be global. And if anyone out there is watching, and this is not planned, this is just on the hop in the moment. If anyone out there is looking for a mission and you really want to get behind something like Trauma Thrivers and support it and help to elevate it so it's out there to the general public globally, then get in touch with Lebentz, because this lady is just so dedicated to everybody's emotional health, physical and mental well-being. I mean, you truly are. You truly are, girl.
Thank you.
But it's true,
that
Boo.
means a lot.
Well,
And
it's true.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sharing your audience with me. And I hope, I hope it's been helpful to everybody that's listened. And I hope that I get to come back at some point. So
absolutely, absolutely. Of course, my love. And that book that you put together, to everybody out there, I can't recommend a better book at this time for people to find ways to help themselves. Like, can you describe a little bit about EMDR? Because that is a modality that you use and has worked for a lot of people in your care, EMDR.
Yeah, it's eye movement. You don't have to remember this, actually. It doesn't really matter what the EMDR stands for, except to say that it's now a recognized model for healing trauma, and it is based on bilateral stimulation. So the therapist either uses butterfly taps, or they use a light bar with lights that flash across, or they might use headphones with beeps that beep in each ear, or they might use all three. And in a nutshell, what that beeping and the bilateral and your eyes going from left to right do, or the bilateral stimulation, is they help to process old trauma memories that are somewhat stuck in the system. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a really good way of working with trauma. There are loads of other ways, but EMDR is one of my preferred methods.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then EMDR, again, if you could tell us what that stands for, even though it's too much for most people to remember, but just to let them know.
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Perfect, perfect. And again, that book that you took the time to put together has 56 different modalities, EMDR being one, but then people can look into timeline therapy, tapping on the meridians, which I personally don't like, but I have used it in therapy sessions, and there are some people that respond to that. They want to tap on the meridians. They can feel themselves getting physically connected back into something that's having some kind of a response to stimuli. It's resetting their nervous system. And can you give others suggestions that right now that might intrigue someone to look for your book that's free on Trauma Thrivers?
I mean, there's a section on things like EFT and EMDR and sensory motor and somatic experiencing, but there's also sections on things like technical devices and wearables and things like HeartMath Institute and working with the coherence of your heart. And other things that are coming in, there are touch points, which are devices that you can wear on your wrists or your feet that pulsate, that help regulate the nervous system. There are other audio technologies that use frequencies. There's another technology called Alpha Stim that you put on your earlobes that helps to lower your sympathetic arousal, basically. So at some point too, in the next 10 years, we'll all be wearing wearables that will monitor all of our activation and our vagus nerve and our sympathetic nervous system, and probably be having apps that will bring us back with exercises into regulation. Will it get rid of therapy? I don't think so, because I think as human beings, we have to have that social engagement. We have to have that mirror neuron to really heal. And I don't think as yet a digital person or a made up person is going to resonate at the same frequency as speaking to another healing human being relationally, because we are traumatized in relationships, but we heal in relationships.
That is so perfectly put. That should be a meme, honestly, or a tattoo.
I think it is. I think it might come from Gabor Mate, actually, who has come out with a very good film called The Wisdom of Trauma. And Gabor, who is another of my heroes, Oprah Winfrey, maybe the next, no, I'm joking, maybe the next stream will be about Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk, but let's hope I'm not lying on a damp, dewy grass against Psychotic. But he does something called compassionate inquiry, which is a very nice way of going into the body very gently and working with these traumatized younger parts of us. It's all the same thing. It's just a different technique to get there. And all the same thing is a journey towards accepting ourselves and all parts of us for who we are, trauma or no trauma.
Yeah, amazing. And like you say, I truly myself believe that the need to have a conversation with somebody who may have a better understanding of the neural workings of the brain, the mind, the heart, the nervous system should never be a thing of the past, because we are loving beings. And when we need to find someone like you in a safe environment, miracles happen.
Yeah,
healing happens. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. So I don't think that will happen. One thing that I would like to discuss briefly is what I have experienced, and I'm pretty sure you have too, and we don't need to give examples, but I will speak for myself. I have experienced several times over the years what is known as transference. So I have had clients, patients that have come to me that because they are moving through their trauma, they are finding resolutions, they are learning to regulate themselves without meds or whatever, and then they decide that they are in love with me, or that I am God, or I am a doctor, or I am this, or I am that. And that is something that is common, does happen with people. And for me personally, it's excruciatingly embarrassing, and has been a couple of times, and I haven't realized that somebody's got this overwhelming desire and this kind of fantasy that's been building up. So to everybody, in that, what I learned was to allow people, when I feel that might potentially be happening, to let them know that I am just like them. I might have training in a different area, but I am no more special. And for it to be a known thing that there is something called transference, because we're so programmed by the savior complex. Somebody who we think can save us becomes our savior, your Jesus, your doctor, your king, your whatever. And again, it is something for all of us to be mindful on any kind of healing journey. And, sometimes pull back, breathe in, and have a little, reality check. What would you say about that?
I completely agree with you. I think that a lot of therapists and healers have to look at their own codependency or their own reason for getting into the profession, and then work with their own want to maybe be the healer or the savior. Because I think it was Deepak Chopra once that said, somebody called him a guru, and I liked this acronym, the way he said it back, and he said, I'm not the guru, because guru stands for G-U-R-U, G-U-R-U. And I remember that, because actually we are just the mirror. We are just the mirror. And our job really is to model being adult to those people, with boundaries and with love, but let them know that they are the ones that are fixing them, that we're on a collaborative journey with them, but we are not the fixers.
That's right. And how beautifully and gorgeously empowering for someone that sees himself as a broken, shattered vessel, that they would find something to balance themselves out, to come into a full sense of well-being from a traumatized psychotic state. And then to know that it was them, it was the person that did that.
Nobody is broken. Nobody is broken. If anybody out there watching this believes that you are, no. Us humans, we might feel broken. I'm not denying that, but nobody is broken because, as you know, Dani, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, healing happens all the time. And I think it's really important in our work that we see people as well, that we see them as healed, that we see them as fully functional human beings, because they are. Their adult core self is still there. However broken they feel in that moment, they're in one of their wounded childhood parts, but there is always an adult that I'm speaking to and seeing.
Yeah.
That person is always there underneath the layers, maybe a bit hidden, but there is somebody in there that is their real self trying to get out.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Lebentz. Lebentz.
Thank you all.
I love you, girl. I love you so much.
And sending love to you.
Definitely.
Yeah, and to everybody watching.
Oh, thank you so much, Lou. We'll put your website underneath the broadcast, and we'll put part 2, which will be this part, under there too. And again, Lou, thank you for gracing us with your genius, your brilliance, your compassion, your beautiful hypnotic voice, your wisdom, your book that you're giving away for free on the Trauma Thrivers Facebook group. Again, guys, please pop on over there, sign up. The resources are mind-blowing. Thank you, Lebentz.
Thank you, everyone.
Lots of love.
Much love. Bye, darling. See you soon.
Definitely, my love. And to you beautiful people out there, thank you so much for joining Lebentz and I today, this evening, whenever you might watch this. And we do hope collectively that we've given you some resources, some things to think about, some ways again to focus on your own self-love and your own self-recovery and whatever you may be going through. And just know that there's a lot of love out there for you. And I send you all my love, and I'll see you soon.